Today, I am literally reviewing a screwdriver. But before you click off, this is an electric precision screwdriver and it comes with a whole bunch of bits. And we're going to use it to replace the thermal paste in my notebook here. Stay tuned. I get emails constantly from companies wanting to send me the weirdest stuff. I've literally had a company offer to send me a wet dry vac to review before. I mean, why in the world would a tech channel review a vacuum cleaner? However, when I jokingly told my wife about that one, she wanted me to get it. You know, just for the record, I didn't. However, when I was first starting this channel and I first started getting those emails, I was excited that people actually wanted me to look at their stuff. So I have several reviews that I've done for companies in the past, but I've always restricted it to stuff that actually fits into my niche. So like mini PCs and webcams and stuff like that. The problem was a lot of those videos didn't get a lot of views and they were actually kind of hard to produce. I mean, you can't review something without testing it first. And the time it takes to test the product and then film the review and it only gets a few hundred views just wasn't worth it to me. But first, I gotta pay some bills. So check out today's sponsor. Is your copy of Windows 10 unactivated? Well, it doesn't have to be, because with today's sponsor, VIP SCD Key, you can get a valid Windows 10 license for under $20. Stop dealing with that stupid watermark on the desktop, the valid license for Windows 10. Also, with an activated copy of Windows 10, you can upgrade to Windows 11 for free. Just go to the link in the description below and pick up a valid Windows 10 license key. During checkout, use the code CYBERCPU for a 25% discount. Once you have your key, go to your activation settings in Windows 10 and click on the link that says Change Product Key. Enter the product key you just purchased and hit Activate. Now you don't have to deal with that stupid watermark that come with running an unactivated copy of Windows 10. Now, on with the video. So, as you may have noticed, I haven't done a lot of reviews lately. I mostly just turn down people that ask me to review their products, if I even respond at all. But I got an email a while back with a product that was so cool, I had to take a look at it. And here it is. It's the Fanttik Next E1 Max. I hope I pronounced that right. But if I didn't, the link will be down in the description below. Now, for years, I've been using the iFixit toolkit, and I absolutely love this thing. I would recommend the iFixit kit for any technician or even anyone that works on notebooks on a somewhat regular basis. With that said though, it would take a lot for me to switch to a different precision toolkit. So let's take a look at what this thing comes with. So the first thing that you'll notice is it essentially comes in this little square cylinder here. And the way that you open it up is by essentially just pushing on the top of the case. When you push it up, it also kind of ejects the screwdriver. It's kind of spring-loaded inside of there. When you have it closed, the screwdriver doesn't just fall out of it like that. It actually has something holding it in there. If you do plug it in though, you can pull the screwdriver out. However, it doesn't just fall out like you would think it would. However, once you pull the screwdriver out, you can also pull this entire section out right here. This has about 50 different bits that are magnetically held in place. So there's no clips or anything holding them in. Essentially, if you want to take a bit out, all you do is just pull it off of the magnet that's holding it onto the little carriage thing right here. It also comes with a metal spudger as well as a set of tweezers. And I just have to warn you ahead of time, these tweezers are really sharp. I stabbed myself with them pretty much the first thing I did when I opened the package up. Also, from what I noticed when pulling these tweezers out, it's really hard getting them back into the spot that they're supposed to go in right here. It doesn't seem like it's the right size for them, but you know, eventually you can get it back in if you mess with it enough, but I'm not gonna mess with it right now. Now, the driver itself is essentially just an electric screwdriver, but if you notice on the back of it right here, it has a lock position, so it doesn't move at all, but it also has a light. So if you wanted to look at something, you could always turn a light on it when you're doing whatever precision work that you need to do. And then by turning it from the back right here, you have a low setting and a high setting. I would say you'd probably be better off sticking with the low setting most of the time, but if you have a stubborn screw, maybe the high setting will work. Now, the low and high settings don't change the actual speed of the bit, it just changes the torque that the bit uses. So if you put it on low, it won't use as much torque and it'll actually shut off quicker. So that actually makes it kind of useful to not strip screws, because the one thing you don't want to do with a precision screwdriver is strip any screws. Now, what do you say we put this thing to use by repasting the CPU in my notebook here? If you just want an overview of my thoughts, then you can skip to the end of the video. Otherwise, let's see how this thing works. Now, let's move some stuff out of our way here so we can actually work and get this notebook flipped over. Now, if you've ever taken a notebook apart before, this one is a really simple one, and it's kind of the reason why I picked it for this video, because I didn't want to do any difficult work. I actually just wanted to use the screwdriver and see how it worked. So the first thing I'm going to start with is by removing the screws from the back. On this one, it has several exposed ones and some hidden ones too, and I'll show you where those are at. So the exposed ones are right here. Let's see how this thing works. So it's essentially, this thing has two buttons. It has a forward and reverse button, which kind of makes sense because an electric screwdriver, you want to take screws on and off. And I did notice that if you have a screw that's really tight, it will actually, the light will blink on it and it won't let you turn it any further. So that's kind of helpful to not strip the screw, but that's what I spoke about at the beginning of the video. Pulling these things off, it's going to take a minute to get them all off. And usually when you're taking a notebook apart, it's really a good idea to kind of keep track of which screws that you're taking off and where they go, because as you can see right here, I've got several different size screws. So I've got a long screw and a short screw. And these ones right here, clearly you don't want to screw the long screw into the short screw hole because you can cause some problems with your notebook. Usually if you try to do the short screw into the long hole, it just won't work. So the next thing we're going to do is, now that we've gotten all the exposed screws off, we can actually pull the CD-ROM out. This screw right here was the one that held the CD-ROM in place. So we're going to move that out of the way. And now we have to get to some of the hidden screws. And that's where this little spludger comes in really good. And now on this notebook right here, we have 2 screws on each back foot, and we have 1 screw on each front foot. So to pull these off, we just kind of work around these feet right here. And you want to be kind of careful with these. You don't want to damage the actual foot itself, because then you'll have to replace it, and that's never fun. And one thing I noticed is that this screwdriver, the bit is just barely magnetic. It doesn't have a lot of magnetism. So let's take a look. So this little kit right here comes with a little magnetizer. So you're supposed to be able just to put the screw bit in here and magnetize it. Let's see how it works. Okay, so, and it's even worse. Let's see, maybe they're labeled wrong. Let's put it in the demagnetizer and see what happens. And nope, it doesn't work. Okay, so this bit apparently seems to be demagnetized. Let's see if all of them are like that. Hang on real quick. Okay, no, that bit is magnetized. So, all right, so one of my bits is demagnetized and I can't seem to magnetize it. So that's kind of annoying. So let's move on. Let's remove some more screws here. And one of the reasons why it's kind of a good idea to have a magnetized bit with a notebook is because a lot of these screws are kind of difficult to get out sometimes. Like this one right here. Yep, and I can't get it out. Let's see. Let's use our magnetized bit right here to pull it out. And that one worked fine. So the only issue though is that this bit isn't the right size for the screws that I'm removing. So if you use the wrong bit, you can take a chance of stripping a screw, and that's the last thing that you want. So now let's get some of the back screws here. And on this notebook here, we only have 4 more screws and then the thing's all taken apart. And I don't know if you can see this in the video, but if I try to turn it on a screw that's too tight, it doesn't let me. It'll go for a minute, the light will blink, and then the motor will stop in the electric screwdriver. And I kind of like that. But I'm sure if you end up into a problem to where you can't get a screw out with it, then you can always put it on the high torque mode. But I typically use these things on a low torque mode, especially when you're using something like this, because like I said, you really don't want to strip a screw when you're taking a notebook apart. Okay, so the next thing that we have to do is actually remove the back panel. And for this one, you just pull up right here, and then you can pop the back panel off. And this is another reason why the spludger comes in handy, because you can use this to get some of these more difficult clips right here. Typically though, if I'm taking a notebook apart, I won't use a metal spledger to pull the case apart. I know this notebook because it belongs to me, so I've taken it apart a lot of times before. But most of the time, when you're taking a case apart, it's nice to use something plastic. So typically, I use, in the iFixit toolkit, they have a bunch of these little guitar picks, and these things work really good. But for this, we're trying to use this kit completely, and this one doesn't come with any kind of plastic spledger, so we have to use the metal one. So the next step that we need to do is we actually have to take the cooler off so we can repaste it. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. Now with this, not having a magnetic bit is gonna be really annoying because yeah, these screws are very tiny. So right now I'm just taking the screws off that go around the CPU heat plate. And this heat plate is attached to a heat pipe that goes along to the cooler right here. And we have to take that entire thing off. And luckily on this notebook, you can do that without taking the fan off. Essentially, all you do is you lift it up and lift it out of the way, and there you go. Now, as you can see, I don't actually need new thermal paste, but it was a great excuse to show off this screwdriver. So let's go ahead and clean it up and we'll put some new stuff on anyway. Now, when you're doing thermal paste, it's a good idea to keep paper towels around. You don't want to do this with regular towels because it makes an absolute mess. It's nice to be able just to throw these things away when you're done with it. So what I typically do is just wipe it off, and you want to try to be as clean as you can with it. You don't want to smear this stuff all over the place because it can make kind of a mess. All right, so that doesn't look too bad. So once you get it off the CPU, now we're going to take it off of the heat plate itself. And if you're going to be replacing your thermal paste, this is a great opportunity to blow some of the dust out of the heat sink. However, this one here doesn't have any dust in it because, to be honest with you, I really don't use it that much. And as you can see from the thermal paste that was on it, it really didn't need it. So this thing was actually just put together not too long ago. So for the thermal paste, I usually like the Thermal Grizzly. Now this isn't sponsored. They don't give me anything. I got to buy these tubes right here and they're kind of expensive, but this stuff is really good thermal paste. So I've been using it for a long time and I highly recommend it. So on this one here, I'm sure we're going to get different people in the comments that are going to have different opinions on what I'm doing wrong here. But usually if you just do a pea size right in the middle of the die right here, then I do a little one right on the secondary die there, and that should be enough. And now we can drop this back in. And for these right here, for a direct die CPU, I usually don't spread it out. If I'm using a heat spreader, I will usually spread the thermal paste out. But on a direct die, I don't bother because it's so small that I don't really think it's necessary. So now we're going to try to put this together without a magnetic bit, which I think might be a little annoying here. Okay, well, we got it in. We got one in. Now we got 3 more to do. All right. So for these right here, these tiny little screws, this is where having some kind of control of your torque on an electric screw gun is probably a great idea, because this is honestly the first time I've ever taken apart or put together a notebook with an electric screw gun, because honestly, I'm kind of negative on them because of the fact that you could over torque a screw. And if you did that, it could cause some serious problems. So now that we got that back together, we can throw the back on and hopefully it'll still work. I don't know why it wouldn't. It should still work. That would suck if it wouldn't. All right, so on these notebooks, I usually just push the case back on to clip all the little clips back in, and then we can go around it and start screwing all the screws back in. I gotta say, the biggest annoyance that I have so far is not being able to have a magnetized bit. That is kind of a major hindrance to me. However, the screw gun portion of it really does work well. Oh, there I go. I was trying to stick a screw onto the bit, but I can't because it's not magnetized. All right. So when you're screwing this thing back together, this is why it's kind of a good idea to keep your screws in order, because you want to put them, like I said, back in the same spots. You want to be really careful. When it comes to short screws, you don't have to worry about them too much. But when it comes to long screws, you want to be extremely careful not to screw a long screw into a short hole because it will cause damage. Usually on most notebooks, it won't cause any permanent damage, but on some it will. On some notebooks, you can actually run a screw through a PCB. And if that happens, then, well, you're kind of in trouble. But on the majority of the time, what'll end up happening is the screw could actually come up through the palm rests, and then you'll have a hole on the top of your computer. And that's never fun. So, there we go. And it works. Good deal. Now, as you can see, this kit has some positives and negatives. For one, I gotta say, I really like being able just to push a button to remove a screw. However, with most electric screw guns, sometimes they have a problem breaking free, and, really tight screws. Like I showed in the video, there was a couple of them where the light blinked a little bit. But I have to say though, that it's a little cumbersome on this one to actually put the screwdriver into lock mode and then put it back into drive mode if you want to actually manually turn a screw out. And the other problem too is that when I flip it into lock mode, it doesn't always lock the screwdriver. In fact, sometimes you can still actually spin the bit if it's locked. See, like right there, I was actually able to spin the bit quite a bit. So even when it's locked, it doesn't actually lock in all cases. Also, the screwdriver itself just doesn't feel right in my hand. It feels kind of bulky for a precision screwdriver. However, I'm not going to hold this against it because it's probably just the fact that I'm used to using the iFixit driver, which is a lot smaller, as you can see, but it's not electric either. I do have to say though that one of my biggest pet peeves with the iFixit driver is that when I set it down, it always rolls away from me on my bench. But with this one, see, look. Is it gonna go? Is it gonna fall? No. It almost fell on the floor. But that's what I'm talking about. It always rolls away. Now with this one, if I set this one down, even if I try to roll it, let me just get a clear spot here. Even if I try to roll it, it's counterbalanced, so it actually kind of stops where you set it. So if you set it, no matter where you set it, it always stops with the controls facing straight up, which I think is kind of nice. Now, the biggest issue that I think I had with this kit though is, like you saw in the video itself, was the bit itself remaining magnetized. As you saw in the video, I tried to use the magnetizer with the kit and it just simply didn't work. Now, it very well may be that I'm just not using the magnetizer properly, but I don't think I am. I think it's just a problem with the bit itself. However, once I changed to a different bit, it was already magnetized. So that bit was kind of not the right size though for the screw, and it could take the chance of damaging the screw. So you want to make sure that you have the proper screw. The proper screw size is much more important than the magnetization of the screw. But you know what? With that said, the kit does use standard bit sizes, and the iFixit bits work just fine inside of it. So, might just use it as an electric screw gun with the iFixit bits. Now, I haven't mentioned this up to this point because I thought this would be better saved for the end of the video, but this kit is not cheap. At the time of filming this video, this kit was selling on Amazon for $70. Now, you can get an iFixit ProTech toolkit like I have here for $75 on Amazon. So for $5 more, you literally have the best precision screwdriver kit ever made. I do have to say though, that this kit does have benefits that the iFixit doesn't have. The obvious one is it's an electric screwdriver. Another benefit is the fact that this kit is a lot smaller than the iFixit kit. As you can see, this is essentially the package size right here. The iFixit kit is a lot bulkier. But then again, iFixit does offer a smaller kit, but I don't think it comes with anywhere near the amount of bits that this one comes with. This one comes with 50 bits in a pretty small package size. Then there's one more benefit that I can't forget to mention, and that's the light. On this one right here, as you get older and your vision starts to fade, it's nice to have a light where you can see what you're doing. For you younger guys out there, go ahead and make your jokes, but your time is coming. In fact, one of these days, you're going to be stuck wearing a pair of these too. So I would keep your mouth shut right now. It's not fun. At the end of the day though, I don't know that I'm going to lay down my iFixit kit for this one, but the electric screwdriver portion of it might find its way into my iFixit kit, if I can find a way to get it to fit into the case, that is. With that said though, if you'd like to see my review on the iFixit ProTech Toolkit, you can check it out right here. This is a much older video that I did a long time ago, but if you're trying to make a decision between this one or the iFixit, then it's worth taking a look at. As always, you guys have a great day.